right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin. I am the head of developer relations at Descope. We are a customer identity and access management platform, and basically what we help you do is help you build Auth for your web apps, your mobile apps, and more recently, like your MCP servers and AI agents. And so today what I'm going to be talking about is basically some of the best practices that you can employ to protect any AI agent that you're building, or more specifically an MCP server. But first, I'll just kind of give a little bit of background of why we are trying to solve this problem and why this problem exists, and a little bit of background on, or a little bit of some numbers on what the MCP server kind of deployment looks like in an enterprise setting today. There are like thousands of MCP servers out there. I'm sure almost all of you have used or at least are familiar with MCP servers. Particularly the MCP servers that exist out in the open source, but even ones that are kind of already deployed by big companies like Notion and Linear and things like that, typically have a kind of very simple authentication experience and not a lot of kind of complicated or granular authorization built into it. And what a lot of developers in large companies are trying to do is they're trying to use these MCP servers to actually provide additional context to their agents to do things either through their own internal APIs and such and things like that. And so through the numbers here, you can see that most MCP servers that are developed today have no built-in security, and very few actually end up getting deployed. And a big reason for that is because adding authentication and adding authorization to your MCP server can be quite challenging. You have to basically manage consent. You have to have an OAuth 2.1 compliant provider. You have to implement things like dynamic client registration, which most software engineers don't even know what that is. Have to basically figure out how to issue tokens, manage tokens. It's a lot of security stuff that, frankly, a lot of engineers just don't really want to be bothered to build and don't want to have to learn how to build. And so this is a very common challenge with deploying and building MCP servers today. And the way you can kind of think about how you secure an MCP server is with these kind of multiple layers. The first is basically being able to actually deploy a remote server, be able to monitor and audit which agents are connecting to that server, which agents are asking for which permissions to which tools, things like that. This is something that's kind of a non-negotiable starting point for a lot of kind of enterprise CISOs and things like that. The next is adding that kind of basic layer of authentication, which, as I mentioned, which is very common in the kind of commonly used MCP servers out in the world today. The ones that you might use, like Linear, for example. You connect to it through Claude, you go through a simple login process, it gives you a little consent screen that says you're consenting to this MCP server. That's like the second layer. So it's a little bit easier to add that. There are a lot of platforms out there, not just us, that make it very easy for you to add that to your MCP server. But where it really gets complicated is the final two layers, is the third being authorization. So not just authenticating into an MCP server saying, I want to access this MCP server, but actually being able to define what tools, what scopes your agent or your MCP client like Cloud Desktop and stuff can access. So this is things like, for example, if I want to connect to an MCP server that can go out and schedule calendar events for myself, which I'll actually show in a demo here. If I want Claude to be able to just read my calendar and understand what events I already have in my calendar, be able to answer questions based on that, versus actually being able to go out and schedule a calendar invite and send emails to people and things like that. Those are two different sets of permissions. So you have to define what those actually are, which a lot of engineers today don't actually have a real good kind of blueprint or framework on how to actually do that. And so a lot of times it just doesn't even happen. And then finally, the last is governance. So this is an administrator actually stepping in and saying, even if an end user says they can have an agent. Oh, sorry. Let's see if that. Yeah. Even if an MCP or even if an enterprise administrator wants to, or sorry, even if a user wants to be able to say, no, this agent can go out and schedule calendar invites, with this agent or whatever, an administrator can say, no, this person with this particular role, with this particular set of licensing or subscription or permissions cannot actually let its agent do that. So those two final pieces are what we at Descope are trying to make very easy for you to implement in your own MCP servers. So now I'll talk a little bit about what we actually do as a product, and then I'll show you a demo of how we actually go out and do that. So when we talk about our agentic identity offering, we call it the Agentic Identity Hub, and there's three kind of main bullet points of use cases for this product. The first is we want to make it really easy for you to actually expose all of your existing APIs, everything that exists within your product, to an AI agent through an MCP server, and be able to provide that third layer that I talked about before, which is be able to actually define and give consented access to specific scopes, specific tools, and specific APIs. The next is from an AI agent builder perspective. If you're building an AI agent, you actually might need to connect to multiple MCP servers. You might need to connect out to multiple services like Google Calendar, HubSpot, all of these kind of platforms, GitHub. And every time you do that, the user needs to actually provide consent, and there's a token involved. So we will actually go out and manage all of those user tokens for you. We manage organizational level tokens, and we can provide a policy that makes it very easy for you as an administrator to tell all of your internal employees, everyone that you control, basically everyone that you want to manage, what their agents can and cannot have access to. So those are the kind of three main use cases that we do. The kind of starting point for that is being able to give you a full-fledged OAuth provider. So this is something that I'm sure most people have seen before, have interacted with. It's when you connect to any MCP server that's a remote server, you'll see that consent screen, you'll see that kind of basic login process. We make it very easy with a drag and drop workflow for you to customize and build that and insert it into your MCP servers. So that's the first thing that we do, and we call that our inbound apps. The next is our outbound apps. This is where we allow you to connect to all the external services that you would want to connect to, things like, as I mentioned, YouTube, Zoom, Google Calendar, things like that. So we basically will allow you to connect to those tools. We'll actually manage the tokens and refresh them for you, and we'll allow you to provide a policy to actually control access to those tokens. And what you end up with is this kind of identity control plane in the middle, where the inbound app is the token issuer and the manager for authorization and authentication between the AI agent and your MCP servers and services you're trying to connect to. The outbound apps are actually managing all the tokens for those services, and the policy engine is running in the middle, basically making the whole thing kind of work together. Cool. So now I'm just going to show you a demo. I'm actually going to show you a really easy way for you at home to spin up an MCP server with authentication and be able to do all the things that I was basically just mentioning. So let's do that. So first things first, in our Descope console here, and by the way, this is, anyone who wants to do this at home can just go to descope.com/sign up, get access to our full platform. There's no credit card or anything that's needed. And you can see this exact page that I'm looking at or that I'm showing you right now. And the first kind of starting point to all of this is I want to build an MCP server that can schedule calendar invites for me, but also read from my calendar and allow me to ask questions about it. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this inbound app section and enable DCR, Dynamic Client Registration. This will allow you to basically have any agent in the world connect and register themselves with your MCP server, and it allows you to define what tools you have in your MCP server. So in this case, I have a few simple tools. The ones that are actually important for this demo are calendar read and calendar write. So I'm just going to basically define the name here. I'm going to define a description. This will be shown to the end user. So this will be shown to me when I sign into my MCP server so that the user me actually knows what I'm giving access to. And then a few other things which, you can follow our docs. It's pretty straightforward. But what you end up with is this backend it's basically a URL that you plop into your MCP server through FastMCP, through Vercel MCP handler. We have many, many integrations. at that point, your MCP server is basically fully protected with our OAuth provider. And one of the great things about Descope is we actually give you this no-code drag-and-drop workflow. So you can actually define exactly what the authentication process looks like for your end users. And this could be everything from the actual login screen itself. So this is what the user will see when they sign in your MCP server. If I want to add sign in with Facebook, it's as easy as basically dragging in this, clicking save. It's automatically hosted by us. You don't have to deploy anything. We can add SSO. You want to add basically a simple kind of condition that says if this user has SSO, go to their Okta or Azure, something like that. And then we can have conditions for consent. So is consent already granted? If consent isn't, go to this consent screen. Everything here can be styled and customized exactly how you want. This is just a demo, but you can see how those kind of screens that you've probably interacted with that you never really thought about before, they can all be defined here. And this is what you actually need to do if you want to actually build that security into your MCP servers. So we have all of these kind of components here. We have a few few screens that'll let me offer up an API key or connect to Google. I'll show you how those all work in a second. But this is a really kind of nice way to actually architect out how the auth works with this no-code workflow here. Now, the next part is going to our outbound apps. So after we've configured our inbound apps, it's as simple as that. We now have auth for our MCP server. Now I want to connect Google Calendar, for example. So now what I'll do is I will add Google Calendar, and we have lots of different templates right out of the box. We have like over 50 that you can choose from here, and we have generic ones as well. So if you want to connect to any other auth provider, you can do that. But here I have Google Calendar already set up. And the great thing about this is you can see that I can just plop in my client ID and secret. This is my Google OAuth app credentials. And then I can see all of the tokens that are being managed. So this is an MCP server that I have out in the world right now. Anybody can connect to it. And these are the users that have signed into my MCP server with the scopes that they've granted consent for. I can revoke that consent. I can see the tokens. They will automatically be refreshed. So all of this kind of OAuth stuff that people don't really want to worry about is all managed through our platform. And the coolest thing about it is the access control policy. So I'll show you this when I connect in Claude Desktop. I'll show you how this all materializes. But what I have here is a very simple policy that says any agent or MCP client that connects to my server, if the user that signs in with that MCP server has a viewer role, it can only view calendar events. So it cannot actually go out and schedule. I have not given the Google Calendar scope, I have not given that permission to a user with a role with viewer. And if I look at this other policy here, which is a scheduler role, if they have a scheduler role, then they are allowed all scopes. So they can do whatever they want with Google Calendar. So it's a very, very simple policy. You can create as many as you want, and they exist on each one of those outbound apps. So now what I will show is I will go to Claude Desktop, and I will connect to Descope demo. So this is my Descope MCP server. And if you're noticing here, this is the flow that I was showing you earlier. So this is the actual screen. And you can see here, I didn't deploy any new code. Sign in with Facebook appeared automatically because I added it to the flow and saved it. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in with Google. And then it's showing this consent screen. So this is something that, again, you probably have seen if you've used an MCP server before or just signed into some platform where you needed to kind of give consent. And you can see here, there's some interesting things we can do at Descope. With Descope, you can set which scopes are optional versus mandatory. In this case, this is optional. So I can say, I don't want to give the agent access to my HubSpot data if I don't want. But I'll just show you, this is all kind of for demo purposes, but the ones that are important here are being able to both read and write from Google Calendar. So I'm going to say authorize. And then HubSpot, we won't worry about that. I'll skip that for now. This is customizable. You're probably wondering, why am I signing in again? Well, I'm signing in again because I'm not trying at this point to just sign in as a user. I'm trying to actually give my agent or MCP client consent to actually access my calendar. So this is not something that I would do every time I log in. I'm showing this as the demo, but this is where a lot of that magic happens of there's an association between permissions, between Google Calendar, between HubSpot, everything, and what we already control with our inbound apps. So I'll go ahead and click allow. And then hopefully Claude doesn't let me down. And I'm configured, or I'm connected to my MCP server here. So now, if I go to new chat, and let's actually look at my user. So let's go to, I'll go to here. And then I will go to my users. And it looks like I'm a viewer role. So let's do this. So let's first make myself a scheduler. So I'll make myself a scheduler. This could be something automatically kind of sent from like Skim or something from an SSO provider. This could be an attribute that you change, or these attributes can even be updated like with a webhook from your own APIs, things like that. So this is just a very simple example, but I'll set it as scheduler, and then I'll go into here and I'll say schedule a meeting invite with r@descope.com for 5:40 p.m. PST tomorrow. We'll go ahead and ask that. Oh, my computer's about to die. Perfect timing. Okay, so recognize my create calendar event scope. Oh, it looks, okay, great. So it recognized my MCP server. It recognized that I'm trying to create a calendar event, so it called that tool. And you can see here, if I click on this link, it actually went out and scheduled that calendar event in Google Calendar. So very simple use case. But now what I'm going to show you is not deploying any new code, not changing my MCP server in any way, but simply changing this role to viewer. Now, you would expect then that Claude should not be able to schedule that calendar invite if I ask the same exact prompt. And this could be a scenario where, if you're building within an enterprise an MCP server and somebody leaves the company, or somebody gets their permissions demoted or something like that, an administrator could simply go in here, just like they would with other kind of security tools, and be able to just flip a switch and turn off the user's ability to actually schedule that invite. And then I will go ahead and just literally copy this exact prompt. We'll start a new chat. And we'll see what happens. So it should recognize the tool, and then see what it says. There is a permissions issue accessing Google Calendar. So that is basically, in a sense, what we are doing. We are giving you a way to add auth to your MCP server, giving you a place to manage all the tokens and all of the basically connections to those external services like Google Calendar, and giving you a way to enforce who has access to what within your MCP server without you having to redeploy any code. That is, so that's basically what Descope does. I think I have a little bit of time, so I'll just show you guys. If you guys want to try this out at home, I would highly encourage you to, if you guys have built any MCP servers at all in the past, I'm sure you guys are familiar with things like FastMCP. We have a FastMCP kind of native provider, which you can use. We also have this template in Vercel out of the box, which is really nice because Vercel also hosts the MCP server. So if you guys want to build an MCP server just for fun, play around with it, you can literally go to this template here, click deploy, and you can literally just with one click drop in a project ID with Descope, and you're off to the races and have an MCP server with Auth. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. Do we have questions for Kevin? Questions? No? Yes.
Your product is crossing several boundaries. So you have different type of problems that you're solving across authentication to MCP, access control, all of that stuff. So what are those categories that you think of yourself as a company? Like, what are those categories that you're really trying to nail?
That I think, sorry, that I think of ourselves as a competitor, you mean?
No, like what's your, maybe what's your core, the thing that you do the best? Is it authentication? Is it integration? Is it access control? Or maybe the answer is, look, we do all three, but you know.
Yeah, so I think the way our product is set up first, like we traditionally were a customer identity and access management, a CIAM company. So we focus a lot on the authentication piece particularly. That's, I think, one of the ways, like with our drag and drop flows that you've seen here, one of the ways we really stand out from a lot of our competitors because we made just building authentication extremely easy for a developer. Where I think we are heading and where at least, you know, compared to a lot of our competitors today, I think where we really kind of shine and have key differentiating factors is the authorization side. Because other than a few kind of small startups, there aren't any real kind of competitors that are also CIAM platforms like ours that give that control, give that granular control for authorization for tools and things like that that we do. So I would say that that's going forward going to be our biggest kind of advantage as a company. But I'd say as far as the product works today and you know, all of the different things that we offer in a product from like being able to connect the third-party services and things within the actual flow itself, being able to define from a multi-tenancy standpoint, organizations with their own SSO configuration, like these are all things that are, you know, just kind of the foundation of what you need to build the platform that we're trying to build, which is effectively an identity provider for agents, right? That's basically what we're trying to do. We have a lot, I think we as a company are very proud of the product that we have today and that we've kind of found an extension, a natural extension of that for agents.
Thank you. More questions? No? Okay, so I think we're good, Kevin.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, let's give Kevin a round of applause. Kevin also has a booth over there, so if you have more questions, feel free to go and talk directly to him.